let's stay a little bit on the issue of intelligence. Where do you see the role of human being and human intelligence in the future when we all fed the big data clouds with our behavior, when the big companies have enough data to build their artificial intelligence? Where do you see the role of a human being, and what differs artificial from human intelligence in the future? So where should I train my kids to invest in their education to make a difference in the future? Is it empathy, or what is it? What do you think? Because at the end, it's not machine communicating with machine. There's some humans there.
Yeah. Well, I have a dark perspective. I think survival skills would come very handy. How to avoid getting trapped by robots. I mean, a very useful skill for the future to come. But I mean, look, ultimately, I think it's going to be very tough, because what the changes we have seen in the last 10 years, they indicate that AI and automation is now spreading from low-skill jobs to jobs that were previously safe, accounting, sort of legal briefs. So a lot of lawyers and accountants stand to lose their jobs. And ultimately, of course, we can argue that there will always be some kind of creative activity that will be very hard to build with AI. But even there, we're seeing huge advances being made. You'll hear a music song produced by AI, and a lot of people will have a hard time even understanding it was written by AI. I mean, we have many of those songs already. Clearly, it's not a very easy field. Who is going to make money that AI systems will then appropriate, for me, is a more interesting question. Because our traditional economic systems and our traditional analysis is still, at least in my kind of view, is still premised on the idea that it's humans who are ultimately responsible for producing the kind of wealth that then gets shared around by machines, by companies, governments, and so forth. When you just shift to a world of machines, somebody has to pay for their use, right? Because that's the only way you can actually make a return on investing in those machines. Right? And I assume that will not be other machines paying for the services of other machines, right? You can't really have an economy just running on transactions between different businesses. And this is where it's not obvious to me how will we actually be making a living. So the first skill to train your kids is to make a living. Because ultimately, if they don't make a living and they don't contribute any value to the machines, why should machines let you stick around? That's the question that I think we need to be able to answer. Because as you delegate more and more tasks to this digital automated economy, right? I don't think that the fear is that there will be some kind of a emergent intelligence within the system that will one day decide that perhaps there is just far too much costs associated with these pesky humans running around. I don't think that that's such a far-fetched possibility. It doesn't mean that there will be drones coming to assassinate you, right? But you have to understand that it's not obvious what's the economic case for keeping humans part of the law.
Yeah, but I think there are some options. One is get off data. Okay, we are an analog community, and we buy something and we live autonomous without data.
Yeah, survivalism. That's what I suggested to you at the beginning, because it will not be easy.
Or using the data for far more enhancement, for singularity. This movement. Connecting technology with human being. What is your view on this? Is there an evolution of humankind based on this intelligence? So it's a vicious circle between artificial and human intelligence, and we are co-evolving on the next level where we don't know where to go.
The singularity analysis I don't really buy. It's very plausible because it has no grounding in any economic analysis of what's happening, and it actually owns the machines and how investments will be recouped down the road, right? So it's analysis that I think is grounded in very appealing, actually quasi-religious narratives that appeal to a lot of people for the same reasons that religious narratives appeal to people. But it does not have an answer as to how traditional contradictions, the fights over resources, fights about inequality of access to wealth, to other goods, how they will be resolved just by the fact that there are more machines that are autonomous and that do not require maintenance or sustenance the way humans do. But in terms of getting off the grid and staying off this data-intensive platforms, there too, in an economy where everything converges upon this logic of data extractivism, people who are not producing data in some sense are equal to people who are not paying taxes or refuse to hold a normal job in an economy that's now not dominated by data, right? Essentially, it's shirking away from your duty to be an active data producing subject.
Yes.
If you listen to the rhetoric of many technology CEOs from Silicon Valley, including those of Alphabet and many other firms, they basically tell you, well, you're all generating data. If only you gave us your data, we would be able to solve a problem like cancer. So, the implicit implication of this is that by not giving them your data, you're standing in the path of progress, science, and humanity's ability to solve a problem like cancer. Right? Under conditions like this, there will be two classes of people who will be able to avoid this data extractivist nets. One will be the very rich, who will just be able to stay off the grid and use their mechanisms to essentially evade data extractivism the way they already avoid taxation. And then it will be, those who will really be like a violent faction, who will be able to defend themselves by essentially using their own technologies. Then, so you can argue that Anonymous and many of these current groups we see that use their hacking skills and the cyber attacking skills, they kind of represent that more violent faction that will refuse to be pushed around by the big technology firms.
Okay, and the good citizen now then uses Google, shows his life, produces videos, and feed the machine with its data, so then they're a good digital citizen.
Yeah, but I think it's
and
not...
they should be paid in the future then by Alphabet or somebody to do that.
Yeah, I think it's not just some kind of ideological predisposition, it's also an actual fact of life. I mean, if you're not part of those systems, you're missing out on a lot of benefits you would otherwise get. You're missing out on free services, so you'll have to pay for all of them. You're missing out on a lot of discounts that you'll get as a valid member of those systems. If you're not on Airbnb, if you're not on Facebook, it's much harder for you to get an account on Airbnb, because if you have a lot of friends on Facebook, it makes it easier for you to also prove that you are an actual valid person to Airbnb. And that to me is very disturbing.
Work on my social score.
To some extent, but you also see the identity, implicit and explicit identity provided to us by those platforms, because it's so deeply embedded into our social relationships and social networks. That identity starts functioning akin to the identity that was previously issued to us by the state, right? So Airbnb at this point accepts both your Facebook profile and your passport issued by the state as valid verifications of your identity, right? And my fear is that the delegation of more and more power to this business sector essentially will result in privatization of many of the functions that we traditionally associated with the state, including things like security provision, which is increasingly now dominated by these big tech firms that offer to protect us from cyber attacks that are mostly caused because their own software is full of security holes and they have no incentive to fix it. At least they manage to sell us protection services from their own server. I mean, at least that part is kind of interesting. Or, they will take over identity and other kind of mechanisms that, for good reasons, before was provided in a much different socialized manner by the state and not by some kind of privatized private actor drawing on the data about our social connection.